So trying something new tonight. We're doing a little live on YouTube. I had a customer reach out to me. He didn't want any crazy mods. He was on a budget. He just wants like a reshell. I recommended a IPS screen for him. So we're doing a atomic purple shell. We're gonna do black buttons. He sent me his Game Boy Advance SP, which is actually in really great condition, so I don't have to do much. Normally I would switch out all the button pads, the capacitor. He didn't want any of that, so we're just going to do a basic cleaning, a reshell, and I will install a new battery. I'm going to keep the same speaker for him to fit with inside of his budget. It's in extremely good condition compared to some of my other ones. I'll just show you some of my other ones that I build from scratch. Like you could just tell, extremely dirty and rusted. But these are the ones I fix up. Usually put in new left and right triggers. I would replace this volume switch. But yeah, we're going to keep it real budget, real simple today. It doesn't need much of a cleaning, but I like to go over the volume switch with some isopropyl alcohol. Normally I'd pull out the triggers, but they're still very clicky, so I don't find any need to do such. I'll probably go over it with some sandpaper inside the cartridge slot to make sure that it reads properly. But yeah, pretty impressed with how clean he kept this after 20 some odd years. So the fuses are still good. EM8, which is in charge of charging, is still good. So no need to fix any of that up. The Game Boy did power on, so there's no issues with that. Yeah, very minimal today. I want to get this going, the lives, and then I'll just chop up my YouTube videos from the lives. Let me know if that's something you guys want to see more of. The customer only wanted a basic reshell, but I convinced him to go with a IPS screen for a little bit more. And whenever I add an IPS screen, just for power reasons, I like to clean the power switch as well. So we'll do that. So to start up, I'll put some flux paste over the shield portion of the power switch. I'll use some low melt solder first to remove it, and then when I go over it, like a second pass, I'll use the real solder. Gotta give my iron a moment to heat up. I just put a new tip on it. So I'll just put some solder on it too, get it going. Just bought a new solder sucker so that it doesn't, it's like a exhaust that absorbs the solder, so I'm not inhaling it. So if you hear that in the background, that's what that is. We're just putting some solder on the 4 points that holds the shield in place. I also like to go over the power switch points so that when you're, you know, kind of trying to get in there to pull the shield off, you don't accidentally pull the power switch off. So you're kind of building like a new bond to the board. That's all I'm doing now. I'm just going over the 4 pins that hold it to the board. When you do this, you just got to be mindful not to hit the plastic of the cartridge pin. It's very easy to burn. So I got some solder on the shield, so I'll just get that off with some of this wick, desoldering wick. Takes it right off. So to pull off the shield, you got to get a blade, craft knife in between the plastic and the shield. So from there, I'll heat up one side. I'll just try and slip the craft knife under there. And lift. So now that's no longer connected. Heat up the other side, and it should come right off. There we go. So that's the power switch coming off. I'm not sure if you could see it, but it is pretty dirty, even though the board is extremely clean. This causes power issues if it's not clean, less battery life, all that good stuff. I'll just go over that with some isopropyl alcohol, Q-tip, and then a fiberglass pen. I recommend anyone who's getting into modding, always clean your power switches. Very, very important. When I first started, I didn't see how important it was until I started getting people returning customs for power issues or battery life not lasting long. And now it's something I do on every single one. Whether I think it needs it or not, I would say 99% of the time it needs it. When cleaning the actual power switch itself, you gotta be very careful because the metal that's connected to the plastic could come off very easily. And if that comes off, there's really no repairing it. can glue it back on, but I don't recommend that. So right off the bat, you could already see major difference in how clean it is. I like to do Q-tip first, then fiberglass, and then Q-tip again to get rid of any residual fiberglass stuff that might be left behind on it. All right, so now we put the power switch back in. With the SP shield, it doesn't really matter which way you put it back on. The Game Boy Color, it matters a little bit more. All right, so the shield's back on. Now we'll solder that back into place. I like to really make sure it's in there, so I'll push down on the shield while I reheat the solder. Make sure it's flush in place. And then from here, I'll test it, make sure that we're sitting in there nice. I just put the battery to it and hold it recessed in. And if you could see, the power light is coming on. Comes on pretty easily, so that means it's in there pretty nice. Normally from here I would replace the capacitor. He didn't want to go that far, so we'll leave it for now. He said in the future he'll be willing to do USB-C mod, capacitor switch, all that good stuff. So we'll save that for another video. Normally I'd cut this off, replace it, but we're trying to stick within his budget. Yeah, I don't think this board needs anything else, so we'll just go right into the IPS screen. These are the newer IPS screens. They have these brackets that hold them in place, as opposed to like a foam that the other ones use. We'll take the bracket off. And it's always good to test it before you do it, because they won't accept your return if you void this sticker on it. So we'll just test the screen real quick. Plug it in. Attach the battery. Make sure it turns on. Looks good. No defects in the screen. So we can continue from there. Remove the screen. Yeah, so you can even see it. It says void on here. So if this sticker is removed, the screen is then voided. And most of the time they won't accept your warranty after that. So it's always good to test before you take this front layer off. This part isn't 100% necessary. I just like to insulate any exposed board. So I'll put some Kapton tape over it. More important for like Game Boy screens, Game Boy Color screens that are touching the board directly. So we'll just add some Kapton tape. from here, we'll reattach the brackets. The way to know if you're putting the bracket on correctly, these two little tabs will be at the bottom. Debating whether to go with black or purple insert. Personally think the purple looks better. Let's see if I have any more black ones. Since this is see-through, I like to do a little pass with the microfiber cloth on it. My OCD won't allow me to let any dust in here. Pretty good. So I think I'll stick with the black insert for now. That's what me and the customer discussed. So I'll leave it black. I'll show him pictures. And if he decides we change it, I'll change that in a later time. So for the ribbon cable, you got to give it a little twist. A little twist like so. Could look like that. So we'll put in the 5 Phillips head screws that come provided with the kit. You want to use the small ones for this portion. Since I'm screwing into new plastic, you got to be very gentle. Make sure you're coursing the screws into the new plastic. I'll leave it a little loose until I get the other ones in. Safest way to do this is like 2 or 3 screws forward and one back until it, and then just rinse and repeat until it sits in there flush. The safest way to do it without breaking any plastic. I've done many times. We'll do 3, back 1, forward 3, back 1, forward 3. Make sure everything's sitting in there nice before we tighten it up. Nice and centered. So we'll go back and we'll tighten everything up nice and flush. Once you get it to its tightest point, you should go back 1 semi-turn. So there's not so much pressure. So it's fully tight here. We'll go back 1 semi. Fully tight. Back a little bit. All right, screen is prepped. Put the plastic over the front to avoid more fingerprints. That's prepped to go. Since I'm happy with it, pretty much locked in with the screen, we'll add the little bumpers that go over the screw holes. They come like this. There'll be 2 at the top, 3 at the bottom. The 2 of them go in the top corners. There's no adhesive, it just goes right in there. Then the flatter ones will go in the bottom 2 corners and the middle. All right, there it is. Screen's fully prepped. We'll put that to the side for now, and we'll start prepping the bottom shell. So we'll start with adding the plastic that goes over the power LED. Slips right in. I like to do that first because sometimes I'll forget to put that in. And then I have to take it apart to put that part back in. So this is the cartridge slot shield. To attach it to the board, you use 2 big screws, 2 of the longer screws. I could just go over this with the microfiber cloth, make sure it's dust free. The dark side with the sticker will be facing out. Same thing when screwing these in, it's fresh plastic, so you want to just do like 2 or 3 spins, 1 back, 2, 3 spins, 1 back. I'll go about 75% of the way and I'll start the other side. When it's fully tight, go back about 1 spin. While we're here, we'll do the left and right trigger. I think they forgot to include the 2 bars that hold it in place, but I have a few extras, so that's fine. I'm not seeing it in the kit. Normally there'd be 2 metal bars that hold the left and right in place, but I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm surprised. I've only had maybe 1 other kit that didn't have them included. So this part's a little tricky. I'm going to get like the little bend part on the far side, just under the plastic. Then you get one of the little bars in between. From there, I like to put it in its place. And then you pull this portion of the spring and connect it to this little plastic holder for it. So it's in place, and then we'll pull the metal down and attach it to the plastic. All right, looks good. Now this part will attach the hinges. This part easily where you can mess up the Game Boy completely. When you push the hinges in, you can break the plastic pretty easily. Done it before. Hopefully it doesn't happen this time. Otherwise, I'd have to order a new shell. So attaching the plastic to the hinges. That's what they'll look like. Ribbon cable slips in through this little portion of the shell. All right, so this is the part that's a little dangerous. You be as careful as possible and it could still break. All right, so here's the part that you could break it. So I'm going to try and push these into place now. You got to apply a lot of force, but you don't want to apply too much that you push too much through. All right, we're safe. We did it. So hinges are in. Shell and screen are prepped. Test it, make sure it opens and closes. Looks good. Ribbon cable's slipping out a little bit, but we could slip that back in. So I want to be very careful dealing with the ribbon cable. It's very easy to snap, and once you snap it, there's really no fixing it. All right, that's in. So what we'll do from there is add the little part that goes over the ribbon cable. Once that's in place, looks good. Use a big screw to hold that in place. All right, cool. It'll look like this. From here, we will reattach the board to the ribbon cable, being very mindful of the tension on the ribbon cable. From here, I like to hold it up with something so it's not putting too much stress on the ribbon cable. To add brightness control, you have to attach this to over here, Q12B. So I'm going to prep a wire for that. Whoop. Accidentally pulled the protective stuff over the wire off completely, so we'll just do it again. Sometimes I'll do a little design with the wire, a little hard or something, but it all depends on the build. I don't think this one is fitting for it, so I'll just make it nice and flush. I like to have the wire just big enough to connect them so it doesn't look too sloppy. Extra wire. All right, I think that's a good size. So we'll go ahead and add some fresh solder. Adding to a new pad, you should heat up the pad a little bit before you put the solder on. All right, that is pre-tinned. Now we will attach the wire. All right, that's all ready to go. So from here, I'll flip the board, still keeping it propped up so I'm not putting too much tension on the ribbon cable. We'll start adding some buttons in. With the buttons, they usually include a volume slider. For most Game Boy Advance SP boards, the volume slider is attached to the volume. So a lot of times in my build, you'll just see gray. But they do include it in case you do get one of the models that do have the removable slider. This one is attached. I wouldn't recommend trying to pry it off. So depending on the motherboard, you can't remove the power switch and you're kind of just stuck with the gray color. We'll go ahead and add the pads. All right, so there is some dust on it, so I'm going to try and blow it off without blowing all the buttons off. We're going to use the original speaker from the original motherboard. And we'll seat the motherboard in place, add the power switch. And to check everything looks good to me. Now we will screw the motherboard into place. 3 small screws to do this. I like to start with the middle one first, holding the motherboard flush to the plastic to make sure that it's lining up in place. Same thing, fresh plastic, so you do 3 forward, 1 back, 3 forward, 1 back. I won't tighten it all the way until we get the other screws in. All right, looks good to me. Let's go ahead and put the back shell on. Slightly easing it in so that we're not putting any pressure on anywhere it shouldn't be. I like to make sure that the buttons feel pressy, nice and clicky before I go ahead and screw it in. Power switch looks like it's in nice, it's doing its thing. And now this will be 4 big screws in the corners. It's weird. I think there's one big screw missing, so in the meantime I'll use one of the original screws and then we'll swap that out later when I go through my stock of screws. So I think it'll match. So holding it nice and tight, not too tight. And we're just going to do the same thing, 3 forward, 1 back. That's nice in place. And then it's 2 small screws, one in the battery slot. Oh, I did forget something. I forgot to put in the slot that holds the battery compartment to it. So we'll take this off and we'll just do that again. It happens. If it's not the LED plastic, it's the battery holder that I always forget to put in. Easy fix. We'll just take it back up off the back shell. All right, so taking the back shell off carefully. And then from here, making sure the screw inside is on the right side, the correct side. Just kind of slip it in there. Just push that into place. There you see it. Little metal portion that holds the battery to the back cover in place. And then we'll go ahead and put this back on. Just do another dusting, make sure no dust got in there. Gently getting it into place, not forcing anything. All right, we'll continue where we were, putting the screws back in. Once the plastic is coarse, you don't necessarily have to do the whole 3 forward, 1 back, but it's still safe to do. This new plastic is very delicate, so it's very easy to either strip a screw or completely ruin the shell. And this doesn't really pertain to this build, but if you ever have screws attached in, ever use the soldering iron on the board, it'll heat up the screws and that will separate the plastic from the shell. I've done that before, especially on the more expensive shells, like the $50 shells, $60 shells, and then I have to go back in with like some sort of plastic bond and fix it, so I don't make that mistake anymore. Even if it's a quick touch up of some solder on the board, if you have screws in, make sure you take all the screws out because you could easily ruin the plastic. All right, so we'll just do a quick test. I'm going to try the new battery. If I could find where I put them. Volume works, screen brightness works, power works. Once I fully assemble it, I'll test it with the game, make sure that all the buttons are working properly, that games are reading. But it's looking good. We're almost there. From here, we'll attach the battery cover, and it attaches directly to that metal piece that we went back in to put back in. Oh, I did forget. I forgot one more thing. Screws inside the battery cover. Feeling the pressure of the live, making mistakes. We'll just pop that back out. We'll get a screw in. So a tiny screw in the battery compartment. It is good to test it though before you fully assemble it, just in case you have to go back in. And then one small screw at the very top of the shell. Be careful not to apply too much pressure on the screen. The screens are very delicate and expensive. Pop the battery back in. Make sure power's on. Good. Now we'll tighten the battery compartment in place. Add the little Nintendo sticker that it comes with. The Nintendo symbol facing towards us. Like to just lightly press it on and then shimmy it into place so that it's perfect. Making sure it's straight. And then we'll press it into place. For the back sticker, I like to put it on a cloth so I'm not putting too much pressure on the shell or scratching the shell. Do a little something like that. Looks pretty straight to me. Yeah, and that's that. We just did, you know, a quick little reshell, clean the power switch, add an IPS screen to it, new buttons, new membranes, kept the same speaker, nice shell insert. He didn't want a USB-C mod. He said that's something we'll do in the future, so maybe that'll be for a later video. Yeah, that's that. Now I'll just test it off camera, make sure that everything's functioning properly. If I have to go back in, I will. Buttons feel good. Sometimes you could tell right off the bat if it's pressing like more than one button or not, or if it's too mushy. But like I said, when we started, the motherboard was in great condition. Brightness controls working perfect. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I think that's all I got for you tonight. If you want to see more lives like this before I chop up the videos and speed them up, let me know down below. Yeah, but that's all I got for you guys tonight. Thank you.